Your support matters. With 90% of our viewers yet to subscribe, we need your help to keep creating engaging content. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let us know where you're watching from. Leave your city in the comments below. In the beautiful town of Maplewood, where the autumn leaves danced in the cool breeze and every corner held memories of love and loss, lived a woman named Clara. Clara was full of grace, with a smile that could light up even the darkest days. She was known for her kindness, her love for gardening, her cooking, and most of all, her devotion to her husband, Mark. Mark was a hard-working software engineer, often lost in his world of codes. His job kept him busy for long hours, leaving Clara to manage their cozy home alone. Their life was peaceful, but something was missing. Clara felt it. The spark that once filled their marriage was slowly fading. Their late-night talks about dreams had turned into dry conversations about bills and chores. Everything began to change during a weekend barbecue at their home. Friends gathered under the setting sun and laughter filled the air. Among them was Alex, Mark's old college friend who had just moved back to town. Alex was charming and full of life. His energy stirred something in Clara, something she hadn't felt in a long time. As the evening went on, Clara found herself drawn to Alex. They laughed about old memories. "Remember that time we got lost during that road trip?" he asked, chuckling. "Oh, how could I forget?" Clara replied with a laugh. "I thought we'd end up in another state." Their connection felt natural and warm. They began to talk more, even when the party was over. While Mark stayed busy with guests, Clara and Alex found themselves lost in deeper conversation. She felt seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. In the weeks that followed, Clara and Alex met often. At first, it was for a local community project, but soon they found themselves on coffee dates and long walks in the park. They talked about life, dreams, and fears. With Alex, Clara felt alive again. One afternoon, Alex turned to her and said, "Sometimes life leads us to unexpected places. It's okay to want to be happy." Clara's heart ached. "I love Mark," she whispered, "but I feel stuck." "You deserve to feel alive," Alex replied gently. As their bond grew, so did Clara's guilt. She was living a double life, devoted wife by day, dreamer with Alex by afternoon. Mark noticed she seemed distant, but he blamed it on stress. He even planned a weekend trip to rekindle their love. Clara appreciated it, but it only made her heart heavier. One evening, she sat beside Mark and whispered, "Can we talk?" Mark looked at her, concerned. "Of course. What is it?" She took a deep breath. "I feel disconnected. Something's missing between us."
He held her hand gently.
"We can fix it, Clara. Just tell me what you need."
The words trembled in her throat.
"I've been spending time with Alex."
She finally confessed.
"It started as a friendship, but I developed feelings."
Silence filled the room. "You've been seeing Alex?" Mark asked, his voice cracking.
"How could you?"
Tears rolled down Clara's cheeks.
"I never meant to hurt you. I just felt so lost."
Mark stood up, trying to understand.
"Do you love him?" "I don't know."
Clara admitted.
"I care about him, but I love you. You're my husband." "Is that enough?"
He asked, pained. Clara reached for him.
"I don't want to lose you. I'll do anything to make this right."
Mark sighed.
"I need time."
The next day, they went on the planned trip. The lake was beautiful, but the silence between them was loud. At sunset, Mark joined Clara on the porch.
"We were happy once,"
He said softly.
weren't we? "We were,"
She answered.
but I lost sight of who I was. I thought I could find myself in Alex, but I was wrong.
And now?
I want to rebuild what we had, if you'll let me.
Mark looked at her long and hard.
Trust takes time, Clara. Are you really committed? I am.
She said with tears.
"I love you. I want us." He took her hand. "Then let's try." The healing wasn't easy. They began therapy, talked honestly, and faced every hidden hurt. Clara cut ties with Alex. She met him one last time. I've decided to focus on my marriage, she said, her voice steady. I understand, Alex said, sadness in his eyes, but it doesn't change how I feel. I know, she whispered, but I can't live a lie anymore. As she walked away, she mourned what might have been, but felt strength in choosing what truly mattered. Months passed. Clara and Mark slowly healed. They celebrated little victories, a shared laugh, a walk in the park, a quiet dinner without tension. One evening, Mark turned to her. I've seen you grow. I'm proud of you. Thank you, Clara smiled. I'm thankful for your patience. He took her hand. Let's keep growing together. I want to, she said softly. I want to rediscover our joy. As stars sparkled above them, they leaned into each other, two hearts learning to beat in rhythm again. Days passed, and Clara did everything she could to show Mark that she was truly sorry. She cooked his favorite meals, left small notes for him on the fridge, and waited for him to come home with quiet hope in her eyes. But Mark stayed distant. He was polite, kind even, but the warmth in his eyes had faded.
Every night, Clara lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she had already lost him. She missed the sound of his laughter, the way he used to hold her in the kitchen while the food was cooking, the way he used to whisper, "I love you," when she least expected it. Now, there was only silence. One evening, she sat in the living room with a cup of tea in her hands, the clock ticking loudly in the quiet house. Mark came in from work, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. He paused when he saw her. "You're still up?" he asked. "I couldn't sleep," she said softly. "Can we talk?" Mark hesitated, then nodded and sat across from her. "I've been thinking a lot," Clara began, her voice trembling. "About us. About how I hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I need you to know I'm still here. I'm not going to give up on us." Mark looked down at his hands. "You broke something, Clara. Something I thought could never break between us." "I know," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "And I hate myself for it." Mark's voice was quiet but heavy. "Do you even know why it happened? Was it because I wasn't enough?" Clara shook her head quickly, crying now. "No, you are more than enough. I lost myself. I stopped feeling like me. I felt invisible. But it wasn't your fault. I never said anything. I just drifted away, and I let someone else fill that emptiness." He looked at her, pain in his eyes. "And now? Now I want to find myself again with you. Not through someone else. I want to rebuild, even if it's hard. Even if it takes time." There was a long silence between them. The only sound was Clara's quiet sobs. Then Mark slowly stood up and walked to her. He sat beside her and placed his hand over hers. "I don't know if I can forget," he said honestly. "But I know I still love you. And maybe that's enough to try." Clara nodded, holding on to his hand tightly. "That's all I want. A chance." In the weeks that followed, they continued going to therapy. It wasn't easy. Some sessions were filled with shouting, some with tears, and some with long silences. But they kept showing up. They kept talking. Clara started writing again, small journal entries about her thoughts, her mistakes, her hopes. She shared some of them with Mark. One day, he found a note on the kitchen counter. It read, "I know I broke something beautiful, but I still see the pieces shining. I want to build something even stronger, even deeper. With you." Mark read it 3 times, his heart aching. That night, he brought home a small bouquet of wildflowers, the same kind Clara had carried on their wedding day. She cried when he handed them to her, and he pulled her into a long, quiet hug. Bit by bit, the distance between them grew smaller. They went for walks again. They started holding hands in the car. They laughed at silly things, and sometimes, when Clara reached for him, Mark didn't pull away. One morning, Clara opened her phone and saw an unread message from Alex. Her heart sank. She stared at it for a long time. But instead of opening it, she deleted it. Then, she blocked his number. Later that evening, she told Mark. "I got a message from Alex," she said quietly. "I didn't read it. I deleted it." Mark didn't say anything for a moment. Then he nodded. "Thank you." That night, for the first time in months, they fell asleep holding each other. Months passed. Autumn turned into winter, then to spring. Their love was not the same as before. It was quieter, more careful, more honest. And, somehow, even more beautiful. One evening, as they stood in the garden, watching the flowers Clara had planted begin to bloom, Mark turned to her. "You know," he said gently, "we made it through the storm." Clara smiled, her eyes shining. "Yes, and I think we're stronger now." He kissed her forehead. "Let's keep building." Day by day. And so they did. The days grew longer, and so did the quiet moments between Clara and Mark, not the kind filled with tension, but the kind that felt gentle, healing. They weren't rushing anymore. They were learning to listen, to look at each other with soft eyes again. One rainy evening, they were sitting by the fireplace. Mark was reading, and Clara was knitting a scarf for winter. The sound of the rain tapping against the windows was like a calm lullaby. "Do you ever think about the beginning?" Clara asked softly, breaking the silence. Mark closed his book and looked at her. "All the time," he said. "You in that yellow dress at the garden party. I thought you were the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen." Clara smiled, but her eyes were wet. "I remember how you made me laugh that night. I hadn't laughed like that in years." Mark leaned closer. "You're still her, you know. That girl in the yellow dress. She's still in you." Clara shook her head gently. "I don't feel like her anymore." "That's okay," he said. "You don't have to be her. You just have to be you. And I still love who you are." Her breath caught in her throat. That was all she needed to hear. A week later, they decided to go back to the lake where everything had almost fallen apart. But this time, it wasn't to escape, it was to reconnect. They walked along the shore in silence. The water shimmered in the sunlight. Clara reached for Mark's hand, and this time, he didn't hesitate. He held it tightly, like he didn't want to let go. "I was afraid I had lost you," Clara whispered. "You almost did," Mark replied honestly. "But I looked at you every day, hoping to see a reason to stay. And you gave me that reason." They sat on the old wooden bench near the dock. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you think we'll be okay?" Mark kissed the top of her head. "We already are." Back home, they began small rituals. Mark started leaving notes for Clara again, the kind he used to leave when they first dated. "Have a good day, my love. Thank you for your smile. I'm proud of you." Clara wrote him letters too. Not just messages, full letters, pouring her heart onto paper. One night, she surprised him with a candlelit dinner in the backyard. The stars were out. She wore the same shade of yellow as that dress he once loved. "I want to fall in love with you all over again," she said. Mark reached across the table and took her hand. "Then let's do it slowly, like we have forever." One afternoon, Clara sat in the garden where she used to dream alone. She thought of Alex, of what he had meant to her, of what he had awakened in her. But she no longer felt pain or longing. She just felt gratitude and release. She whispered into the wind, "Thank you for reminding me who I am. But I don't belong to you." And with that, she let him go for real this time. That night, Clara and Mark sat together in the living room. A soft song played on the radio, one from their wedding. Mark stood up and offered her his hand. "Dance with me?" he asked. Clara stood, her eyes filled with tears. "Always." They danced slowly, gently, as if their bodies remembered every touch, every promise they had made before the world got loud and life got messy. As they moved together, Mark whispered in her ear, "We've come a long way." Clara nodded, resting her head against his chest. "And I'd still choose you. Even with all the cracks, I'd choose you." "I'd choose you too," Mark said. "Every time." Weeks later, they returned to therapy, not because they were broken, but because they were growing. They shared their victories, small ones, like laughing together again, or reaching for each other in the night. The therapist smiled. "You two have done something rare. You didn't just survive, you chose to rebuild." They held hands as they left the office, their hearts lighter, their steps more sure. That night, they sat outside under the stars. Clara turned to Mark. "Do you think we'll ever be the same again?" Mark smiled. "No, we'll be better." She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of him, not just his body, but his soul. He was still hers. And she was still his. Not perfect. but real. The weeks went by quietly, but something deeper began to grow between Clara and Mark, not just trust, not just forgiveness, but a longing. A soft desire to feel close again, not only in heart but also in body. It had been months since they had touched each other in that way, the kind of touch that says, "You're mine and I'm yours." The kind of closeness that speaks louder than words. Clara felt it first one evening while folding laundry. Mark came in, smiled at her, and touched her waist gently as he passed. His fingers lingered for just a moment. That one soft touch made her heart flutter. Later that night, as they lay in bed, not speaking, she turned to face him. The moonlight spilled across his face. She reached out and touched his cheek, slowly, carefully, like she was remembering the feel of him. "Mark," she whispered, "can I hold you?" He turned to her, his eyes tender. "Please," he said softly. Clara moved closer, wrapping her arms around him. She could feel his heartbeat against her chest. It had been so long since she felt his warmth, his breath, his love this close. "I miss you," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm right here," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was full of meaning, full of love. Clara leaned in and kissed his lips, slow, gentle, like the first time. Mark kissed her back, but deeper this time, with a quiet hunger that surprised them both. They didn't rush. They simply held each other, letting their hands remember familiar places, her back, his shoulders, the curve of her waist, the warmth of his chest. Every touch was a question, and every sigh was an answer. Clothes were removed with care, not passion, not yet. It wasn't about fire. It was about healing, about rediscovery. Clara looked into Mark's eyes as he touched her body, not to take, but to cherish. Her skin responded to his fingertips like a flower opening to sunlight. "You're beautiful," he said, his voice shaking. She smiled through tears. "Thank you for seeing me." They made love slowly, holding eye contact, kissing often. There was no need to speak. Their bodies said everything. "I forgive you. I still want you. You are mine. You are enough." Afterward, they lay tangled in each other's arms, her head on his chest, his hand resting over her heart. They didn't sleep right away. They just stayed like that, in the stillness, breathing together. "I was afraid we'd never feel this again," Clara whispered. Mark kissed the top of her head. "I think this is the beginning of something even deeper." "It felt like we were learning each other for the first time," she said. Mark nodded. "But with all our scars, all our truth, and all our love still standing." The next morning, the sun poured in gently through the curtains. Clara woke to the smell of coffee. She wrapped herself in a robe and walked into the kitchen, where Mark was pouring 2 cups. He looked up and smiled. "Good morning, love." She walked into his arms, rested her head on his chest, and stayed there for a long while. "I feel like I'm home again," she said. Mark kissed her forehead. "That's all I want, for us to feel safe with each other. Every day." They sat at the table, sipping coffee, touching hands. No guilt. No distance. Just love. Their intimacy began to bloom again, not only in the bedroom but in small ways. Mark would run his hand gently along Clara's back while she read. Clara would brush her lips along his neck when passing behind him. They would lie on the couch together, breathing in sync, their bodies speaking softly through every moment. They discovered each other again. Not as strangers. Not as broken people. But as lovers who had walked through darkness and found the light. One night, lying side by side under a soft blanket, Clara turned to Mark. "Do you still believe in us?" she asked. He reached for her hand, interlocking their fingers. Now more than ever. Their eyes met. No more hiding. No more fear. They had lost each other once. But now they were finding each other again. Fully. Emotionally. Completely. Clara and Mark's love was no longer silent. It breathed. It moved. It reached places that had been empty for so long. Each night, they shared soft touches, not just out of desire, but out of deep care. Mark no longer hesitated to reach for her hand in the dark. Clara no longer held back when she needed to be held. One evening, after dinner, they were washing dishes together. Music played softly in the background, and they laughed as the water splashed between them. Mark leaned over, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You still make my heart race," he whispered. Clara smiled. "Even after everything?" "Yes," he said gently. "Because now I see all of you. And I love all of you, even the broken parts." She turned around, and he kissed her forehead, then her cheek, then, slowly, her lips. The kiss deepened, not out of need, but out of the quiet joy of being safe again with each other. That night, in their bedroom, Clara lit a few candles. She wanted the light to be soft. She wanted to see him, and for him to see her, not just her body, but her heart. They undressed slowly, their hands learning each other all over again. There was no rush, no pressure. Just love. Mark touched her like she was something precious, something he didn't want to break. "You're beautiful," he whispered, tracing her skin with his fingers. Clara closed her eyes, feeling every movement, every breath between them. When they came together, it felt like a prayer, quiet, warm, full of forgiveness. Their bodies moved gently, in rhythm, their hearts beating as one. There were no loud words, no wild passion. Just slow kisses, deep breathing, and the sound of healing. And when it was over, they held each other tightly, her head on his chest, his arms around her waist. "I love you," she whispered through tears. "I love you more than I can say," he answered. In the mornings, Clara woke with a smile. Not because everything was perfect, but because they were trying and trying together. Mark started leaving kisses on her shoulder before leaving for work. Clara wrote little notes in his lunchbox. Their love was becoming new again, but stronger, wiser. They were no longer afraid of being honest. If Clara felt sad, she told Mark. If Mark felt unsure, he said so. And every time they touched, it wasn't just physical, it was emotional. They were not just making love. They were speaking through their bodies, telling each other, "I'm still here. I still choose you." Weeks passed, and their connection grew even deeper. One night, after making love, Clara lay in Mark's arms and said, "I used to feel like I had to hide pieces of myself. But now, I feel whole with you." Mark brushed his fingers through her hair. "That's because we stopped pretending. We're finally loving each other fully as we are." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "Promise me we'll always be like this. Honest. Open. Close." "I promise," he said, kissing her gently. "We're not going back. We're only going forward." They didn't need to prove their love anymore. They lived it in soft moments, in simple days. They walked hand in hand through the park. They cooked together, danced in the kitchen, whispered sweet things in bed. Even when life got busy, they made time for love, for laughter, for closeness. Their bedroom became a safe space again, not just for physical love, but emotional healing. Every time they held each other, they remembered how far they had come. And every night, when Clara rested her head against Mark's chest, she whispered, "I'm so grateful you stayed." And every time, Mark kissed her forehead and said, "I'd choose you again." Every single time. Months had passed since Clara and Mark began rebuilding their love. Every day brought them closer, stronger, not perfect, but real. Then one morning, Clara felt pain in her lower stomach. At first, she brushed it off, thinking it was stress or something she ate. But the pain kept coming, quiet but steady. Mark noticed the worry in her eyes as she tried to hide it. "Are you okay?" he asked, touching her hand gently. "I think I should see a doctor," Clara whispered, trying not to sound afraid. Mark didn't hesitate. "I'll come with you." At the hospital, after a few tests and a long, quiet wait, the doctor walked in with a serious look. "There's something we need to monitor," he said carefully. "It may be a small growth on your ovary. We don't know if it's dangerous yet." Clara felt like the ground was shifting. Her hands trembled. She looked at Mark, who was already reaching for her. "We'll face it together," he said. "You're not alone." The following weeks were filled with more tests, hospital visits, and waiting rooms. Clara often felt tired, both in body and in heart. But Mark never left her side. He drove her to every appointment. He made her tea at night. He held her when she cried, not with words, but with steady arms and quiet strength. One evening, after a long day at the hospital, Clara sat on the porch, staring at the stars. Mark came out and sat beside her. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked softly. Clara nodded slowly. "I'm scared, Mark. What if it's bad? What if I don't make it?" Mark turned to her, eyes full of emotion. "Don't say that. We don't know anything yet. But whatever happens, I will be here. Every step of the way." Tears streamed down her face. She leaned into him, and he wrapped his arms around her. "I don't want to lose this," she whispered. "I don't want to lose us." "You won't," he said. "We've fought too hard to come back to each other. Nothing will take that away." Weeks later, the doctor called with the results. "It's benign," he said. "Not cancer. We will keep an eye on it, but there's no danger for now." Clara burst into tears, not from fear, but from relief. She looked at Mark, who had been holding her hand tightly the entire time. He kissed her forehead. "Thank God," he whispered. "Thank you for staying strong." Clara smiled through her tears. "I stayed strong because of you." That night, Clara made Mark's favorite meal. She lit candles. They ate slowly, holding hands across the table. When dinner was over, they sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. "Do you know what I realized?" Clara said. "What?" "That love isn't just what happens when things are easy. Real love shows up in the hard moments. The scary ones. And you showed up for me." Mark kissed her gently. "I didn't just show up. I stayed. And I always will." In the months that followed, Clara and Mark took nothing for granted. They walked more, laughed more, held each other longer. And in the quiet of the night, when the world was asleep, they would whisper promises. To be kind, even when it's hard. To stay close, even when life hurts. To never stop choosing each other. One night, as they lay in bed, Clara placed her hand over Mark's heart. "You saved me," she said. Mark took her hand and kissed it. "No, we saved each other." And in that small room, with nothing but the sound of their breathing and the steady beat of love between them, Clara finally felt whole. Not because life was perfect, but because she had found her way back to the heart that never stopped waiting for her. It was a quiet night. Rain tapped gently on the window, and a warm candle glowed on the bedside table. Clara stood by the mirror, brushing her hair. She looked at herself, not just with her eyes, but with her heart. She saw a woman who had walked through fire and survived. She saw someone who was still beautiful, still wanted, still loved. Mark stepped into the room, watching her in the soft light. He walked over and placed his hands gently on her waist from behind, pressing a kiss to her bare shoulder. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, his voice low, filled with warmth. Clara turned to face him, her eyes soft. "Sometimes I forget that." "I never do," he said, touching her face gently, like she was fragile and precious. She kissed him, slow and deep. Her lips trembled, not from fear, but from feeling everything. His hands rested on her back as he pulled her closer, chest to chest, heartbeat to heartbeat. Their clothes fell slowly to the floor, like leaves drifting from a tree. There was no rush. Just love. Just closeness. They lay down together, skin to skin, body to body. Clara looked into Mark's eyes as his hands moved along her curves. Every touch spoke. "You are safe. You are wanted. You are mine." He kissed her neck, then her chest, worshipping every inch of her with care. His mouth was gentle, his lips soft, like he was memorizing her again. Clara's hands ran across his back, feeling the strength that had held her through her hardest days. She whispered his name, and he answered with a kiss, deep and slow. When he entered her, it was not just physical. It was emotional. It was like finding home after a long, painful journey. Their bodies moved in rhythm, slow and sweet, wrapped in love and forgiveness. She moaned softly in his ear, holding him tightly as their bodies rocked together, wrapped in heat and tenderness. Every movement, every breath, every soft cry was full of meaning. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you more," he replied, his voice shaking with emotion. When they were done, they stayed close, tangled in each other's arms. His head rested on her chest. Her fingers traced circles on his back. There were no more walls between them. No shame. No guilt. Just love. Clara kissed his forehead. You make me feel beautiful again. Whole again. Mark looked up at her. Because you are. You always were. You just forgot for a while. I'm here to remind you. They lay there until sleep pulled them into dreams safe, warm, still holding hands. In the early morning light, Clara woke first. She watched Mark sleeping beside her, peaceful and strong. She whispered, more to herself than to him, "This is the kind of love people write about. The kind you fight for. The kind that heals." Mark stirred, opening his eyes. He smiled when he saw her. "Good morning, beautiful." She leaned down and kissed him, soft and slow. "Thank you for not giving up on me." He pulled her close again. "Never. Not then. Not now. Not ever." In the days that followed their tender night together, Clara and Mark grew even closer. It wasn't just the kisses or the touches, it was the little things they did for each other that spoke the loudest. Mark started leaving tiny notes for Clara around the house. On the bathroom mirror, "You're strong." In her garden notebook, "Your love makes everything grow." Clara would smile when she found them. Her heart felt full. She had thought love had faded, but now she knew it had only been waiting to be watered, like her favorite flowers. One morning, she surprised Mark with breakfast in bed. The food was simple eggs, toast, tea. But the tray carried more than food. It carried care, thoughtfulness, and love. "You didn't have to do this," Mark said with a soft grin. "I wanted to," she replied, brushing his hair gently with her fingers. "You've been taking care of me for so long. Let me take care of you too." That evening, they sat on the couch in silence. The room was quiet, but it was the good kind of quiet, the kind filled with peace, not pain. Clara rested her head on Mark's shoulder. "Do you know what I missed most?" she asked. "What?" "Being able to just be with you. No fear. No hiding." Mark wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "I missed that too. I missed us. They didn't need anything fancy to feel close. They just needed honesty. And that was something they were finally giving each other again, fully." One afternoon, while walking in the park, they passed by the bench where Clara and Alex once sat, the place where confusion had once filled her heart. She paused for a moment, staring at it. Mark noticed. He gently squeezed her hand. "Do you want to sit?" She shook her head. "Not anymore. That chapter is closed. I'm here now with you." Mark didn't speak. He just held her tighter. And in that quiet moment, Clara felt something powerful, release, forgiveness, freedom. They continued their therapy, not because things were bad, but because they wanted to keep growing. Clara started opening up more about her fears, not just about what happened, but about herself. "I used to feel like I wasn't enough," she said during one session. "Like I had to be everything or I'd be forgotten." Mark listened, his eyes filled with compassion. "You were always enough. You just didn't see it. But now, I think you're learning to." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "Yes, and that's because you stayed." On their next wedding anniversary, they didn't go out. They stayed home. They cooked dinner together, played their favorite songs, and danced barefoot in the kitchen. Clara wore the same dress she wore on their honeymoon. Mark whispered, "You're even more beautiful now." That night, they made love again, slow, soft, filled with gratitude. No guilt, no fear. Just love that had been tested and survived. One morning, Clara and Mark sat on their porch, coffee in hand, sun rising slowly in the sky. Mark turned to her. "What do you want the rest of our life to look like?" Clara thought for a moment. "Quiet. Honest. Full of little things that mean a lot. I want to grow old with you, still making each other laugh." He smiled. "Then that's what we'll do. Day by day." And just like that, their future wasn't a dream. It was a promise, made with every kind word, every gentle touch, every choice to stay. Months passed, and peace settled gently over Clara and Mark's home. The storms that once shook their world had calmed. What remained was quiet, honest love deeper than before. Every morning, they shared coffee on the porch, listening to the birds. Mark would read the news. Clara would tend to her garden. They didn't always need words. Their closeness now lived in the quiet moments. One morning, as the sun rose and painted the sky with soft pink, Clara looked over at Mark and whispered, "I feel safe again." Mark reached for her hand, holding it gently. "That's all I ever wanted for you." One afternoon, while cleaning a drawer, Clara found an old letter, something she had once written for Alex, but never sent. She held it for a long time. She read her own handwriting, words filled with confusion, longing, and pain. Then, without another thought, she tore it in half. Mark walked in and saw the paper in her hands. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Yes. I'm just letting go, for good." He stepped forward, wrapped his arms around her, and kissed the top of her head. "I'm proud of you. I'm proud of us," she whispered. Weeks later, Clara was in the kitchen, humming softly as she cooked. Mark walked in, holding a small envelope. "What's this?" she asked, wiping her hands. He smiled. "Open it." Inside was a brochure, a quiet weekend cabin by the lake. The same lake they visited after everything fell apart. Clara looked at him with wide eyes. "Are you serious?" "I thought, maybe we could go back. Not to remember the pain, but to make new memories. Better ones." Clara felt her eyes fill with tears. "That means everything to me." When they arrived, the lake was still, calm like their hearts. The cabin was quiet, the air cool, the world slow. That night, they sat by the fire, wrapped in a blanket. Clara rested her head on Mark's shoulder. "I used to be afraid of this place," she whispered. "Why?" he asked gently. "Because it reminded me of what we almost lost. But now, it reminds me of how far we've come." Mark turned and kissed her, slow and soft. "We're stronger now. Because we chose each other." That night, they made love again, not out of fear or to fix something, but simply to celebrate each other. To feel close. To say thank you without words. Clara ran her hands across Mark's back. He kissed her softly, slowly, carefully, like he was still falling in love with her, even after all this time. She whispered, "You still make me feel wanted." "You are more than wanted," he replied. "You are my everything." They moved together gently, like waves on the lake, like breath and heartbeat. There was no rush, no past, just them whole again. The next morning, the sun rose across the water, and Clara stepped outside, a blanket wrapped around her. Mark followed and wrapped his arms around her from behind. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. She smiled. "I'm thinking. I want to write again. About love. About pain. About healing." Mark kissed her cheek. "Then you should." She turned to him. "Can I start with us?" He laughed softly. "Only if you tell them the truth that love is hard, but it's worth everything." She nodded. "I will." And so, with a pen in her hand and Mark by her side, Clara began to write. Not a letter to the past, but a story for the future about love that broke, healed, and bloomed again. Clara started writing again. Each morning, after Mark left for work, she sat by the window with her notebook and a cup of tea. Her words were soft, honest, and full of feelings. She wrote about love, about pain, about second chances. One day, Mark came home early and found her sitting quietly, pen in hand. "What are you writing today?" he asked, kissing her cheek. Clara smiled. "I'm writing about us." Mark sat beside her and looked out the window. "That's a story I'll never get tired of." Clara decided to share her writing online. She started a small blog called Love After the Storm. At first, she was nervous. But when people started reading and sending kind messages, she felt something new, purpose. One woman wrote, "Your story saved my marriage. I thought I was alone." "Thank you." Clara cried when she read it. Her pain had become someone else's hope. That night, she told Mark maybe what we went through was meant to help others. He held her hand and smiled. "Then I'm glad we didn't give up." One weekend, while shopping at the market, Clara saw someone she hadn't seen in months, Alex. He looked surprised, but happy to see her. "Clara," he said gently. "You look peaceful." Clara smiled kindly. "I am." They talked for a few minutes. Nothing deep. Just polite, warm words. Before leaving, Alex said, "I'm happy for you." Truly. Clara nodded. "Thank you. I hope you find what you're looking for too." As she walked away, she didn't feel pain or regret. Just peace. That chapter was truly over. Back home, Mark was making tea. Clara walked in, smiling softly. "I saw Alex today," she said. Mark turned to her, his face calm. "How do you feel?" She wrapped her arms around him. "Grateful. For you. For now." He kissed the top of her head. "Me too." One night, under a sky full of stars, Clara and Mark sat in their garden. "Do you think we'll always have this?" Clara asked quietly. Mark took her hand. "If we keep choosing each other, every day, yes." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then I'll keep choosing you. Always." They sat there in silence, with only the wind in the trees and the soft hum of crickets around them. No big words. No big plans. Just love, quiet, steady, and real. Spring arrived in Maplewood. The cold air turned warm, and flowers began to bloom. Clara's garden was full of color, soft pinks, deep purples, and bright yellows. She spent her mornings there, hands in the soil, heart full of peace. Mark often joined her. He didn't know much about flowers, but he knew about love, and he knew that being beside Clara mattered more than anything. One morning, as they watered the plants together, Mark looked at her and said, "I feel like we're planting more than flowers." Clara smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "We're planting a life, one we chose to rebuild." One evening, Clara felt a little dizzy. Mark noticed right away. "Are you okay?" he asked, gently helping her to the couch. "I think so," Clara replied. "Just tired." A few days later, she went to the clinic. When she came home, her face was pale, her hands shaking. Mark rushed to her. "What is it? Is something wrong?" Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I'm pregnant." Mark froze, his eyes wide with surprise and emotion. "Are you serious?" She nodded, crying softly. "Yes, we're going to have a baby." Mark pulled her into his arms and held her tightly. They both cried, not because they were scared, but because they had come so far. "This baby," Clara whispered, "is a gift. A new beginning." Mark rested his forehead against hers. "We'll be better parents because we've learned how to love through pain." That night, they lay in bed, hands resting on Clara's belly, whispering promises to a life not yet born. As the months passed, Clara and Mark prepared for their baby. They painted the nursery soft green. They bought little clothes, tiny shoes, and a rocking chair. Clara would often stand in the doorway of the baby's room and smile. "This room used to be filled with silence," she said one day. "Now it's full of hope." Mark kissed her temple. "So is our life." One quiet night, Clara sat down and wrote a letter. She addressed it to our baby. "You were born from a love that broke and healed. A love that almost gave up but chose to stay. We didn't get everything right, but we fought for each other. And now we'll fight for you too. We can't promise a perfect life, but we promise a life full of love. Welcome, little one. You were worth the wait." She folded the letter and placed it inside the baby's memory box. The day Clara gave birth, the world slowed down. The pain was sharp, but Mark held her hand through every moment. When the baby cried for the first time, Clara cried too. She held her daughter, a tiny, warm bundle of new life, and felt something deep in her soul. "She's perfect," Mark whispered, tears in his eyes. Clara looked at him, her face glowing with love. "She's ours. She's everything." Now answer me in the comments. I will be reading, and if you haven't already hit like, subscribe, can tap the notification bell so you never miss what comes next. Thanks for being here and making this channel possible.